Air Force, among the best in the world. India has over 15,000 kilometers of land-bound border, in which the Himalayan region presents a tough, high-altitude terrain, difficult to maintain and guard. Here, the Air Force carries out key responsibilities of defending India's airspace, of supplying and sustaining ground forces deployed in remote areas, often at dangerously high altitudes in perilous situations. Siachen, a 74-kilometer-long glacier situated in the northernmost reaches of the country. Outside of the North and South Pole, it is one of the longest mountain glaciers in the world. Even the glacier's lowest reaches are above 11,000 feet. The highest man post rises above 22,000 feet. Siachen is strategically very important, wedged between China to the east and Pakistan to the west, and is guarded by the Indian Army. Troops here occupy more than 100 positions across Siachen and the adjoining ridges. On this ice field, survival is a constant test, complicated by extreme cold and brutal weather. Winter temperatures, worsened by wind chill, can drop to minus 50 degrees centigrade.
यहाँ पर मैं रह कर आया हूँ, वहाँ पर अगर टेम्परेचर माइनस 20 डिग्री है, तो अगर हवा 70 किलोमीटर या 60 किलोमीटर प्रति घंटे की रफ्तार से चल रही है, तो वो टेम्परेचर, वही जो माइनस 20 डिग्री टेम्परेचर है, वो विंड चिल फैक्टर की वजह से माइनस 70, माइनस 50 तक भी चला जाता था.
Life at high altitudes is hard on the human body and spirit. Soldiers at Siachen risk acute depression, diminished appetite, sleep disorders, even memory loss. Roads reach only so far. For many garrisons on the glacier, the only lifeline is by air. A complex airborne logistical system of the Indian Air Force constantly shuttles in every necessity. Kerosene for heating and cooking, food, water, and ammunition. Fixed-wing aircraft handle the first leg of the Siachen supply line, landing at bases situated across the mountains. After which, crews have to deliver the goods to the glacier. Crews rely on helipads installed on the river of ice. To put it mildly, air maintenance at Siachen is a logistical challenge, requiring fleets of aircraft and battalions of personnel interacting across thousands of kilometers of death-defying terrain. For the Indian Air Force, the gateway to Siachen is Ladakh. The region is a high-altitude cold desert, stark, beautiful, and with a largely Buddhist population. An important mountain base here is Leh, set in a bowl surrounded by the Karakoram and Ladakh ranges. The Leh Air Force Base is a crucial base for high-altitude air maintenance on Siachen. Only glacier captains may fly to Siachen, a certification difficult to obtain. Squadron leader Khushbu Gupta is the first woman accorded this much sought-after status.
Flying at high altitudes is very challenging. The degree of difficulty does not start rising when I sit in the cockpit and fly. However, it starts from the word go when I have to get out of my blanket when my alarm goes off at 4 or 4:30.
Khushbu serves with the Siachen Pioneers, a helicopter unit assigned to support the glacier's least accessible posts. She had to accustom herself to cold so intense that she and her comrades wear battery-heated boots to ward off frostbite. At these altitudes, another risk, despite the biting cold, is ironically sunburn. For the Siachen Pioneers, emergencies arise frequently. A call has come for a medical evacuation. It is no exaggeration to say that every Siachen Pioneer flight is risky. The Siachen Pioneers fly cheetahs and its upgraded version, the Cheetals. 2-ton machines whose single engines can power them as high as 23,000 feet. A cheetah can't carry much in the way of supplies, but many posts across the Siachen Glacier can't accommodate the large supply helicopters. So cheetah crews must fly in constantly, playing hide and seek with the mercurial weather. Khushbu has reached a forward post to evacuate a casualty. Unfortunately, a common occurrence on the glacier. Most emergencies arise from lack of oxygen. Troops here are breathing air with only 10% of the oxygen available on the plains. At such a high altitude, activities of daily living, walking, cooking, simply eating a meal, pose massive physical challenges. One big risk is hypoxia, a condition in which body tissues are starved of oxygen. Living at extreme altitudes can also cause high-altitude pulmonary and cerebral edema, formation of fluid in the lungs or the brain, either of which can be fatal. Khushbu has successfully managed to bring the soldier from his post up at the glacier to the nearest medical facility at the Siachen base camp. An army doctor rushes to the patient.
Taking an immobilized patient on stretcher on a snow scooter to the nearest medical facility is very difficult. So there comes the role of the helicopters.
सांस लेने में तकलीफ कब से हो रही थी आपको?
1 वीक से।
अच्छा, घर पे बात हुई थी?
जी।
Now on a monthly basis we have approximately 15 to 17 cases of emergency medical evacuation from all the posts.
Back at Leh, Flight Lieutenant Anirudh Grover is training under Squadron Leader Gupta.
Grover, preparing for tomorrow's sortie?
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me, what are the peculiarities to take off from this helipad?
He has logged over 800 hours in helicopters, but to fly to Siachen, he needs to be a glacier captain.
I'll keep the ledge which will be somewhere here in contact, and clear of that I'll take off. The Glacier Qualification Badge is a very coveted badge in the helicopter fleet of the Indian Air Force. It is called the Mecca of helicopter pilots.
This is the helipad. I carry out a pickup, IG hover, continue going to OG hover, notice the height, ask your co-pilot to pick up prominent points of ground reference. Then you will ask for tail clearance and carry out a turn to the right, and then you will take off. Flying over the glacier is very challenging because of various reasons of temperature, atmosphere being rare, sluggish control response of the aircraft itself, and our own human capability at those altitudes. Therefore, it is very important to undergo a specially scrutinized syllabus which takes almost 8 to 10 months for a person to become glacier qualified captain.
Having completed vital actions, we shall taxi out via Delta and line up on helipad 1. Thereafter, we shall initiate a normal takeoff.
Theory is important, but there's no substitute for hands-on experience.
Taking off the helicopter is itself very challenging at these altitudes. The helicopter works on the principle of lift. This lift is generated with the help of the rotors. These rotors, they push the air down. But at these altitudes, the atmosphere is rare. So it cannot push that much amount of air which is required to lift it up. So it requires all the power from the engine to lift and the skill from the pilot to take off.
There are several phases of glacier flying which need to be learned. The trickiest of these are probably landing the aircraft. Towards this, what we do is, in Leh itself, there is a helipad known as the pillar helipad, which is an elevated helipad off the ground, say 20 feet, where we practice sitting down. The helipad is small, it is matchbox size, which replicates the type of helipads which are there in the glacier.
The training at the Leh Air Force Base has prepared Flight Lieutenant Grover for the real deal. He is ready to depart for the Siachen base camp as Squadron Leader Khushbu Gupta's co-pilot, eager to kick off his maiden flight to the Siachen Glacier. From Hindon Air Base in Uttar Pradesh, an aerial beast of burden lifts off, carrying 77 tons of material and supplies. Destination, Leh, Ladakh, the supply hub for Indian soldiers defending the Siachen Glacier. Each week, many such flights depart Hindon. Each one a C-17 Globemaster III. Just how powerful is this beast? Our crews learned firsthand when they got too close. The Boeing C-17 is the Indian Air Force's most versatile cargo aircraft. A 128-ton workhorse with a T-shaped tail, 4 jet engines, and a 77-ton load-carrying capacity allows the Globemaster to carry over 100 troops, supplies, and even armored vehicles. C-17 pilot, Wing Commander Rahul Singh, is well versed in the demands of high-altitude air maintenance.
C-17 is the most capable military cargo plane in the Indian Air Force inventory as on date. It is highly capable with latest technology, fly-by-wire. It can carry a payload of about 75 tons. 75 tons is a huge amount, which amounts to about 75,000 kgs. It could be a tank along with vehicles, or a series of heavy vehicles, or it could be supplies which are required at a critical juncture.
Under high pressure, the big plane can mean the difference between success and failure.
To prove it with an example, let's suppose we have to carry 45 tons of load from Delhi to Leh. If we move this by road, we'll require about 25 trucks, a lot of manpower, and about a week's time. If we do the same thing in a C-17, we'll be able to load up in 45 minutes and transport the same load in 50 minutes flat to Leh.
At the aerial port, a huge warehouse, Quartermasters stage all sorts of baggage, from the all-terrain vehicles like this gypsy to barrels of essential kerosene. Loads move in minutes from port to plane. Efficiency rules, and a work gang can load a Globemaster in less than an hour. Loading a C-17 is one thing. Maneuvering a C-17 into a base like Leh is something else. To learn high-altitude flying techniques, pilots start out on a simulator. Wing Commander Singh and his co-pilot, Flight Lieutenant G.L. Vineeth, are here to simulate a flight into Leh. The simulator's 3 hydraulic legs and controls enable a trainee to program a flight experience of any kind. The 225-degree view from the cockpit is the same as an actual C-17. Trainees can program in weather, wind, and a host of other challenging factors.
We'll mimic the exact afternoon conditions at Leh. That is, we'll expect about moderate turbulence, no clouding, and no precipitation. Can you see the runway now?
Yes, sir.
Venki sir, freeze flight please.
Flight freeze.
So as you can look outside, we have stopped in flight. We are about 14,500 feet over Leh. So you get the correct picture of the terrain into which you will be flying, the weather condition which you will be flying. That is all going to add on to your training value.
Other than Leh, the C-17s also land in Thois, the Air Force's northernmost base for large planes. Thois is short for Transit Halt of Indian Soldiers en route. Here the C-17s share the field with the Air Force's rotary wing workhorse, the Mi-17. The Mi-17 is a heavy-duty helicopter that can be configured as a gunship or as a transport. This twin-engine craft can carry 36 armed personnel, or at a lower altitude, 4 tons of material. Mi-17s can reach heights of 20,000 feet, making them well-suited for air maintenance at Siachen. But in the thin air, they can carry only a limited amount of weight. Still, in a month, a helicopter unit here delivers more than 200 tons. Whether at helipads or by parachute drop. Either method demands precision. High-altitude drop zones can be tiny, and a missed parachute drop can put needed supplies far out of reach. These Mi-17s also assist civilians living in the northeast of India, where roads don't always reach them. This region's terrain is less steep compared to Siachen. But mist often covers them, and rains frequently challenge aviators. 0, Arunachal Pradesh. This is an advanced landing ground. From here, twin-engine Mi-17s provide support to less accessible, remote civilian villages. It's been raining for days, and the Mi-17 remains on standby. Squadron leader Romit Budwar visits his craft, while fellow pilots keep their gaming skills sharp. Life on the base mixes both languor and urgency, a kind of hurry-up-and-wait situation. maybe tomorrow, the skies will clear. At zero in Arunachal Pradesh, the rain has kept the Air Force's powerful Mi-17 on standby.
The weather in Northeast is very dynamic, especially during pre-monsoon and monsoon seasons. You would have seen that last 4 days we've been just waiting. The continuous rains and really low clouds. But now, 5th day, we have got a small window. There are some high clouds and a lot of wind which is blowing up.
Squadron leader Budhwa decides to take advantage of a break in the weather to brave a delivery to the waiting civilians. Many villages in northern Arunachal are far from roads.
So we made an attempt basing on the visual assessment of the weather and the reported weather. The hilltops were clearly visible, but the clouding was still there in the valley. The DJs and the helipads were all covered up in the clouds. We could not take chance, so we had to abort the mission, and probably we'll have to wait for some more time now for the weather to clear up.
But man and machine must pay attention to the weather. Many other Indian Air Force crews and pilots operate here and elsewhere in the Northeast. The Indian Air Force also has in its arsenal lethal machines that can brave all weather conditions. This multi-role fighter is well suited to patrolling the perilous Himalayan border. Locked and loaded, primed and strapped, the Sukhoi Su-30 MKI is a lethal weapons delivery platform. The Russian-designed twin-engine jet is made in India to Air Force specifications. The small front wing is known as the canard. The canard interacts with the thrust vectoring engines to make the Su-30 super maneuverable. The Sukhoi can also carry and launch multiple air-to-air missiles. In combat, the Su-30 can punch above its weight. With radar systems capable of detecting approaching aircraft hundreds of kilometers away. The Sukhoi's weapon system can engage multiple enemy aircraft all at once. The aircraft can also reach over twice the speed of sound. Aviators who take these machines aloft must train constantly to hone their skills. When not in the air, Flight Lieutenant Nilesh Shendokar is seen flying on the ground aboard a Royal Enfield. As with all specialized aircraft, the path to expertise is simulation. And he's come to train on the Sukhoi simulator. Precision and reaction time are paramount in the Himalayas. Mountains don't move, but to a pilot at Mach speed, they jump up from nowhere, especially in bad weather.
By adding mist and cloud, which is a very normal phenomena in northeastern region, the visibility has so deteriorated that the pilot can get spatially disoriented, in which he'll not be aware about his attitude with respect to the horizon. To put things in perspective, imagine driving a Formula 1 car through the narrow streets of Purani Delhi blindfolded.
And there's no rule book that says that air combat must always take place in sunshine and blue skies. Meanwhile, back at Zero, heavy weather was keeping helicopter crews on standby. But an unexpected break comes their way. Squadron leader Romit Budhwar and cohort spring into action. Hoping the skies will stay clear enough this time to bring supplies to desperate villagers at a remote site.
The sizes of the drop zones, it's very small and limited, which makes the maneuvering of the helicopter quite tricky and to carry out such an accurate drop.
The drop zone is in a distant patch of Arunachal Pradesh. At a safe distance, civilians wait for the helicopters. Without these resupply runs, life here would be that much harder. The drop is successful. Another feather in the Air Force's cap. High-altitude terrain poses extreme risks for aviators, especially for those whose aircraft is down by enemy fire or by mechanical problems. Fighter pilot Flight Lieutenant Hemant Kanalaksha is preparing for just that possibility. Hemant is enrolled in a course run by the Air Force's Jungle and Snow Survival School, staged in the eastern Pir Panjal range of the Himalayas. To complete the exercise, he must survive the night and alert rescue crews.
Once you climb into such a deep snow, which is from 2.5 to 3 feet, then it is very difficult to move upwards, and it definitely there are chances of snow going into your boots. Once your feet they are wet, then chances of chilblains, frostbite, they're always there.
Night is near, and with it, freezing temperatures. Hemant has to improvise a shelter, made only of the materials at hand.
To make a igloo, locate a slightly flattish terrain. Then we have to stamp the snow so that it becomes a bit harder. Then you have to make bricks of snow, cutting with your kukri, and soft snow you can use it like a cement. So it is almost like making a building with bricks and cement. So it takes a lot of time to make a igloo.
Once he builds an igloo, he'll try to build a fire.
I started lighting up my fire. I collected some amount of tinder, but most of the grass here is wet, so it is very difficult to light it up. And I could find some dry woods to use it as a kindle or maybe main fuel. I was trying, and the fire was not lighting up at all. Winds picked up in the evening hours, and winds were strong, so it further aggravated the situation. I tried to light a fire maybe for half an hour to 1 hour, but it was just smoking and a small amount of fire. So finally I gave up, and I was so tired, so I went into igloo and slept off.
It's a crude shelter, but in a pinch, it will do. Or so he hopes. At dawn, atop a peak in the Himalayas, the temperature is below freezing. Inside his makeshift igloo, Indian Air Force pilot Hemant stirs.
When I woke up this morning, my first priority was to have something to sustain the whole day. There was no food around, so the only option was the tea. I had to make tea of pine leaves. Initially I had to burn some snow, and then I had to boil it, and now I had put some pine leaves tree into it to make the tree, and it is really nutritious. It is rich of vitamin C, it provides me energy and nutrition, and it can drive me throughout the day.
As per instruction, he brews his improvised cuppa. now to mark his location so airborne searchers can spot him. Pine boughs stand out against the pristine white snow. Hemant's pattern signal does the job, alerting the crew of a search aircraft. This may be a routine exercise, but evacuations are a regular part of the job.
One civilian casualty, low blood pressure.
It was a routine day in office when we are just about to pack up, approximately around 3:30 in the afternoon.
Sir, there is a medical emergency. Sir, there is a civilian casualty with low blood pressure.
Okay, the place is coming near Kurgiak. We have just about 3 hours left before sunset. Weather appears to be marginal, but we must make an attempt. So let's plan and get moving. So although there was just about 2.5 hours of daylight left, and the weather was also a little marginal, but in order to save the life of that individual, we had to take a quick decision to get airborne. The populations are all located at very remote areas, and there are very few roads, and which are also snowbound for almost 5 to 6 months in a year. All these combined with the lack of medical facilities makes our role very, very vital in this particular area.
With no helipad at the site, Wing Commander Khan chooses to set his craft down on a farmer's field. Accompanying crews hover nearby, ready to offer assistance.
The casualty was one individual with a low blood pressure, which is quite common in this area. We quickly got in the casualty and got airborne. Although the light was fading by that time, but the weather was holding, luckily for us. And I radioed for the ambulance to be available when we land at the tarmac. It was there, so the medical aid could be provided to the individual well in time and his life could be saved. Not only in the Ladakh region, I would say, but across the mountainous terrain of the Himalayas, whether it is Uttarakhand, Sikkim or Arunachal Pradesh, the Air Force carries out similar missions to save a precious life.
Joy can be fleeting at high altitude. Punishing cold, thin air, and grueling conditions conspire to sap military personnel of energy and a sense of purpose. At Leh, the struggle to stay focused and strong is constant. At the hangars and on the base's airfields, maintenance technicians strive to keep aircraft flying under the same strenuous conditions facing the aviators. Sergeant H.K. Sharma is as much a part of any aircraft's crew as its pilots. He may not fly, but he's right there with the aviators, always aware that the flyers will stay alive if he and his ground crew do their job right.
हमारे सियाचिन पायनियर्स के पायलट्स में एक कहावत बड़ी प्रचलित है, My first faith is my God, but my technician comes close second.
The weather affects every aspect of the work.
Despite having all these gears, for example, this is specially designed overall, which protects me even in such sub-zero temperatures. There are certain places in this machine which are inaccessible, especially with the gloves on. तो उसके लिए मुझे क्या करना होता है, ये ग्लव्स निकाल के वो मेटल पोर्शन टच करने होते हैं, और मेटल पोर्शन इतने ठंडे होते हैं, कभी कभी ये भी होता है कि स्किन चिपक जाती है और बाहर निकल जाती है, लेकिन ये तो मेरा जॉब है, and I am trained to do such type of activities. I am a trained soldier, and my duties and responsibilities are towards this machine, and especially towards those pilots who are the occupants of this machine.
It is because of men like H.K. Sharma that Siachen can be maintained as the world's highest battlefield. After having finished his training in Leh under Squadron Leader Gupta, Flight Lieutenant Anirudh Grover has arrived at the Siachen base camp. He will soon be commanding his maiden flight up the glacier. But man and machine once again bow down to the ominous weather. And Flight Lieutenant Grover must wait a little longer to earn his glacier captain's badge. At over 11,000 feet, the Army base camp in Siachen is the hub for the world's highest battlefield. It is from this base that supplies are taken to ground troops posted across the glacier by the Indian Air Force.
It is cloudy and overcast, so the possibility of whiteout cannot be ruled out.
But the weather is keeping the air supply crews from flying. Flight Lieutenant Grover is anxious to command his first flight atop the Siachen Glacier. The ever-changing weather is changing again, but this time for the better. Activity fills the helipad as soldiers load aircraft with necessities. From heating oil to dehydrated meals. Here, getting aloft is only a preliminary step. The journey is always fraught with danger.
There are a number of challenges we face day in, day out flying over the glacier. The first and the foremost is the turbulence. Next major problem we face is the whiteout. As we all know, the glacier is absolutely white all around. So you have to be extremely careful as it creates disorientation. I wouldn't know where the horizon ends and where the terrain, which is also white, is meeting the sky, especially on a cloudy day. So I have to be extremely careful while going in for landing, because again I can lose reference of the ground that time.
Flight Lieutenant Grover negotiates a challenging pillar landing with shining skill.
It was amazing. The kind of landing I showed today, all that training in Leh has worked. I was like just there. I stopped right on top where I was supposed to. I mean, I'm the happiest person today.
Good afternoon, officers. Please have a seat.
At the Siachen Pioneer Mess, a small but significant ceremony takes place. Flight Lieutenant Anirudh Grover has earned his Glacier Captain's badge.
I declare you Glacier Captain. Remember, there is a lot of responsibility that comes in with this. Also, you will be operating independently in the world's highest battlefield. Godspeed, happy landings, congratulations.
The young aviator has long dreamed of this achievement, and today he revels in the rewards, the joy, and the pride.
Being posted over here, I get to fly in the Siachen Glacier. I mean, people would pay truckloads of money just to come to such a place. And I get to operate over here every day. But that is not the only thing which keeps me going. And that look that we get from that army jawan, that gratitude you feel when you go and give him his ration or a letter from home, that is utterly, utterly satisfying. And that is what keeps me going.
Flying well under difficult conditions is its own reward. overcoming the odds of nature is an even greater pleasure. But if there's one overwhelming emotion which these self-sacrificing men and women feel, it is the pride of a job well done. Pride that can't be heard. Pride that can't be described. Pride that can't be expressed. And somewhere, far below the C-17s and the Su-30s, the Mi-17s and the Cheetahs, hunkering on the relentless ice fields against the bitter cold and brutal wind, soldiers turn their heads to catch the hint of a distant but welcome sound.
अचानक जब पूरे सन्नाटे में मेरे को आसमान में हेलीकॉप्टर की आवाज़ सुनाई देती है तो जो खुशी मेरे को होती है मैं उसे डिस्क्राइब नहीं कर सकता.